Now, Boeing's launch, as Kristen was saying there, opens a new chapter of competition in the private space industry. SpaceX has already carried people into orbit 13 times, and its latest rocket was just approved for a fourth test flight. The two companies received nearly $7 billion from NASA to develop their spacecraft. Boeing, the established aerospace firm, was originally expected to lead the charge. NASA Administrator Bill Nelson says turning to private industry was the right move for the agency.
Different from the old days, but we go with our commercial partners now. And when we expand our fleet of spacecraft, what we're doing is expanding our reach to the stars.
Chris Hadfield is a former astronaut and the author of the Defector novels. He's also an advisor to SpaceX and Virgin Galactic. Chris, fantastic to have you with us. I do want to talk about space competition and where this now takes us, but just firstly, give me your thoughts and observations on what it feels like for these astronauts to be on this mission at this moment.
Well, it's a wonderful feeling. They're super busy, of course. They had to fly a rocket ship that's never before, so it's a huge risk, and they and their families recognize just how large a risk that is. So it's great to have that behind them. And now no one's ever flown this spaceship with people on board before either. So this is a big checkout of a new spaceship, but touch wood, everything's working okay so far. As Kristen said, they are now doing a bunch of tests and things on their way in to try and dock tomorrow midday Eastern time in the US. And then that same vehicle, a week or 10 days from now, has to safely bring them down through the atmosphere and just use the heat and friction from the air, 3,000 or 4,000 degrees on the outside of the ship. And they're landing out in the desert using a parachute and airbags. So they're by no means done yet. But the most danger per second is launch. And it's both of them feel hugely relieved, proud, excited, keen about what's going on next. But also, they both lived on the space station before for extended periods. So there's also a great feeling of sort of being back home. And it's going to feel great for them to see that little light of the space station get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then dock and go inside.
I now have both my hands firmly placed on a wooden desk in front of me, though, and I encourage all our audience to also touch something wood, to your point. And I think you gave us the context there of the challenges, even now and for the next few days, that this mission faces. Just to the point about competition, though, just explain how important this is for Boeing. They do have the larger NASA contract. As I mentioned in the introduction, they were expected to be the leader rather than SpaceX had the success that they've had. And I mean, they're 4 years behind SpaceX in getting astronauts into space. Talk to me about the competition that this represents, and also what this means for NASA to now have two sort of powerhouses that they can call upon when necessary.
Well, I think if you talk to the majority of the people at SpaceX or the majority of the people at Boeing, they'd say the competition is mostly with themselves. They've got a contract, they're trying to deliver, and it's super hard to build a safe spaceship. If you want to build one that kills people regularly, that's easy. But if you want to build one that has a real high probability of making it, like the one did today, you have to be very painstaking. If you look back to the previous spaceships, it takes 10 years mostly to build a human-rated spaceship. SpaceX got a bit of a head start because they were already building their rocket, and they had to integrate a capsule on top. It traditionally takes about 10. The space shuttle, gosh, it was way late and delayed and all kinds of similar sort of processes. So that's all normal. Now is that there's more than one flight leaving the station. I mean, if you went to the airport and there was just one airline or one airplane, then you really have your limitations. But now two different companies, two different rockets and spaceships, that just greatly improves the United States' capability to get their own people and stuff up to the space station and back. But it's also great for the two companies because they can maybe not just fly government astronauts, but they can fly commercial astronauts and private astronauts. Other companies are building space stations. So it's still very new technology and therefore expensive. But this is a big step towards making it safer, simpler, and therefore less expensive than it's been in the past. So today's just a day of triumph. And I saw Elon and Gwen Shotwell at SpaceX. They're both
Yeah.
all full congratulations to everybody at Boeing for getting it done right today.
Yeah, and also Elon taking the opportunity to point out that SpaceX has got its own launch of the super heavy Starship rocket, of course, on Thursday as well. So fingers crossed for that from their Starbase facility in Texas. I think that's the launch from there. I mean, NASA, to your point about the collapsing cost in particular, that the private sector involvement in this industry has brought, particularly over the last decade. I mean, NASA funded the development of both these two companies, and Crew Dragon and Boeing Starliner, to reduce the reliance on having to ask Russia for seats to get to the International Space Station. Can you put that into perspective for us as well, and what cost saving? And we try not to involve politics in this part and this sphere, but how much easier it is to have your own seats up there rather than having to ask anybody else, of any nation, quite frankly.
Well, the entire sort of design of the International Space Station has been that each country, the 15 countries that are part of it, they build all their equipment in their own country. So they get the economic financial benefit of that. And then they launch it together to do something that each country couldn't do alone. And and so it's sort of along that model now. You don't have to pay another country to fly your astronauts up. You don't have to trade anything for it when you have your own domestic capability. So that's just good for national business. It's a good step. And there's a third vehicle in development as well with a third American company. So but the beautiful side product of that is we are now creating and advancing and developing technologies that didn't used to exist. It's kind of what NASA ought to be doing. And that is looking at what the future should look like, trying to put in the seed money to help companies then develop the technologies that then improve capability that's available to everybody nationally or internationally. And if you look at SpaceX as kind of the front leader, uh, they are the number one launch company in the world as a result of the technology that they've developed and that NASA partially paid for. So it's a long, slow train getting there. But I mean, just this week, China landed on the other side of the moon and took off. People or a vehicle from New Zealand launched a rocket to space with NASA payload on board. They launched today, and as you mentioned, SpaceX is launching their huge new Starship on their fourth flight test tomorrow. So this is in 1 week. It's a pretty amazing moment. And I'm really pleased for the success that took Sunny and Butch safely to orbit today.
Yes, and we'll keep our hands on touching wood just until we get them back down again. What a week. What an incredible week. Chris, fantastic to chat to you. Thank you so much for your insight and your perspective. It's been an exciting day. Chris Hadfield there. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Julia.